Sean here. This is a video response to Agent 42Q's Is There a Superhero Genre video, which is in and of itself a video response to Mr. CD Camp. I'm not going to do my own Is There a Superhero Genre video because, first of all, I think Matt did a great job. I don't agree with everything that he says, but you're going to get a different interpretation from kind of everyone. And since Matt did such an in-depth job, he did like a 40-minute video on this, he did such an in-depth job of sort of making his argument. I would like to explore his argument more rather than sort of posit a new argument, because I thought there were some really interesting things in there, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything. So, Matt, I'm going to kind of try and poke some holes in your theory, not because I don't like it, but because I'm interested to hear more. So please let me know below if I misunderstand anything or what your response is in general, because I'm really curious to hear how you kind of fit some of these challenges into your idea of sort of superhero genre. So anyway, with that out of the way, first thing, so a few things I just kind of disagreed with. First of all, early in the video, and I was listening to this on my way to work, so if I misunderstand you in any way, please let me know. But you kind of talked about how Batman in like the Nolan movies, since his story is more about avenging his parents, which, to be honest, I don't agree with you about your interpretation of the Nolan movies. So that's kind of a separate topic, but kind of because it's more about avenging his parents, he's not necessarily really a superhero in those movies because he has sort of I'm going to use the phrase ulterior motive, which is, you know, avenging his parents, not so much about specifically helping people. Which I think that's true of maybe Tim Burton's Batman movie, because, you know, the Joker in that is the person who killed Bruce Wayne's parents, so there's more of a through line, like a narrative reason for that. I don't agree with that assessment of the Nolan movies, but again, that's a separate thing. But just sort of taking that as true. So, like, let's say it's about revenge of your parents, and then it's not necessarily a superhero movie because of that. I don't know that I agree with that statement, just because couldn't you make that argument of kind of any superhero in any story? I think that, for example, Spider-Man, you know, it's all about with great power comes great responsibility, and he goes off and he does all these things, which, you know, I mean, they're selfless acts, sure, but at the same time, I mean, there's always a self-serving reason that we do everything. Like, you know, the cynic in me really sincerely believes that no matter how selfless you do something, like, even if it's just for that feeling of, oh, I did something selfless, like, you know, you get a reward for that, and you're working towards that reward. I feel like that's kind of how we're geared as humans. And with someone like Spider-Man, you know, he's kind of enacting his uncle's morals because he let him down, and he's kind of paying that penance. And every time he saves someone, he's kind of inadvertently paying that penance. So, and, you know, that's just Spider-Man as an example. But I feel like you could probably make that argument for just about every superhero. I don't want to say that definitely, because I'm sure there's one or two out there, but like the superheroes that are really well developed and the superheroes we really care about, I feel like that there is some kind of underlying element that, you know, it's really just motivation, isn't it? Like, you know, what's the difference there? And please tell me below what your thought is on that, because I don't think I totally agree with that. The second point that this isn't necessarily the second point I have, not necessarily a point that you brought up, but one of the things that you got bogged down talking about was, is a superhero? Rather than talking about story by story, you kind of lump it into like Deadpool. He's a superhero because his stories are commentaries on superheroes. Or, you know, Turtles, they're not necessarily superheroes, they're more of a science fiction characters, and so their stories are that. So my question is, though, is that really the right way to go about it? Because everything I feel like is very story specific. And to be fair to you, like, you definitely mentioned that. So, like, you say, hey, you know, Turtles in Archie comics are superheroes. Turtles in modern comics or in the original run are science fiction characters. So you are definitely making that differentiation there. But in terms of superhero genre, like, it's totally, I feel like, on a case-by-case basis. You can never really tie a character to a superhero genre. You can only tie the story and the characters and the whole package as superhero genre. So then that leads to a couple questions I have for you, which is, can you have a book that's a superhero genre, or, excuse me, can you consider a story part of a superhero genre if it has no superheroes? So I'm going to come at this from a couple different angles. First of all, there's kind of the more obvious example. Let's say we have a story that's about Alfred. Batman is not in it. Let's say he's not even mentioned in it. But because it's Alfred, somewhere back there, it's a Batman comic book, even though he's not in it. Maybe a better example would be, say, something like Gotham Central, where Batman is in it in the background, but it's really about the police officers. Do you consider that a superhero genre story? On a slightly more subtle level, let's look at a character named Batman, because we've already kind of, and I think you would agree with me, forgive me for putting words in your mouth here, but I think you'd agree with me that it is, to a large degree, dependent on what story they're in as to whether or not they're a superhero. So let's take Tim Burton's Batman Returns. I just did a commentary on this. I don't think a whole lot of people have watched it, but one of the things I talk about in it is Batman is not the protagonist of that movie. He is the antagonist. The main characters are the Penguin, Catwoman, and Max Schreck, and they are trying to, execute their goals. And Batman literally has no other purpose than to stop them. And he only appears whenever he has to stop them. Batman doesn't take any active action in the entire movie. He is completely a reactive character, and he completely is just the wall in the way of the bad guys sort of completing what they want to do. Any kind of character motivation, any kind of logical narrative thread that carries you through the story is completely from the perspective of the villains in that movie. So Batman is the antagonist. So is that a superhero movie? Because part of the superhero genre, and I don't know if you mentioned this specifically, but I think it's kind of assumed that the superhero is the protagonist of the story, right? So if the superhero is in that case the antagonist, can you still consider Batman Returns a superhero genre movie? And I guess the bonus question in that is, can you even consider Batman a superhero in that movie? And if he is a superhero in that movie, then how could it not be a superhero genre movie? So, again, there's a lot of different ways to take that and a lot of different ways to kind of interpret it. So the last question I have, and I'm just going to throw this out there, it's a very broad statement, more just fruit for thought than anything. I don't necessarily even expect you to answer this, but so you go walk up to a random guy in the street and you say, are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles superheroes? Chances are they're going to say yes. So, one of the things that's interesting about your genre argument is you find some examples of things you might think of as superheroes, but, well, they don't really fit this definition, so therefore they are science fiction characters or whatever it may be. My question to you is it fair to say that everyone else is wrong to fit your theory, or is there something missing in your theory? Because, it's obvious to most people that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are superheroes. We'll just kind of go with that. And I might get all kinds of comments about Nerds Below saying, we know that they're not really superheroes, they're more sci-fi characters. But I mean, we're talking, general population here. I think 9 times out of 10, they're going to say they're superheroes. So are they wrong, or do you need a further addendum to kind of what your definition is? And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I personally would agree with you that they are science fiction characters, but I think it's something that's important to keep in mind. It's fun coming up with a genre or an idea for defining a genre, but if we have too many of these exclusions, and if everyone says it's a certain way, chances are they're right. There's something wrong with our model. Something, coming at from more of a scientific thought, sort of the easiest explanation is always the correct explanation, for example. If everybody thinks the turtles are superheroes, maybe they are, so what do we need to change? So just something to think about. Again, I loved your overall argument, and I'm not even disagreeing with you about the turtle example. Just in general, are there too many exclusions? Just an open-ended question to everyone. Are there too many exclusions in this argument in order to really say it's a successful definition of the superhero genre? I would argue it is, but I think it's an important question to throw out there to anyone who's really seriously sort of talking about this. Those are kind of my main questions. I think that's everything that's kind of going through my head right now. I would love to know what you think. Anybody else who's watched both these videos, please chime in below. I'm curious to know what you think. I think genre is such an interesting thing because, as Matt says in this video, everybody has a different perspective, and even literary critics will argue about the genre of something. Especially when you look at something like science fiction, people have very specific definitions of what they think of as science fiction, and stuff that's sort of famously science fiction, like Star Wars. Several critics will argue is not science fiction, for example, because it doesn't have XYZ tropes. I could get into all kinds of stuff, but my point is that these things are very fluid and there's no good answers, or I should say no definitive answers. I think Matt's answer is a good answer, and I want to probe it a little bit further because I think it is a really good example. So let's dig into the comments below. Let me know what you guys think. What did you think of Matt's video? If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. You have to. Really good stuff. Anyway, that's all I got to say. I hope you guys enjoyed my ramblings, and I'll be back soon. Bye.